Pixar's Soul is a movie that I got to watch today, streaming now on Disney Plus. It was going to come out in theaters right around this time, but Disney chose to just put it on Disney Plus for streaming, and it is included in the package. You don't have to pay more for it. And boy, talk about night and day between this and Mulan, yo. This movie you don't have to pay extra for. It's like ice cream and horse manure. You know what I'm saying? So Soul was directed by Peter Docter, who is also known for directing some of Pixar's greatest movies of all time, like Inside Out, Up, Monsters, Inc. You know, the real classics. He masterfully directs this movie, and I gotta tell you that the Pixar animation, as far as having realistic looking characters, is continuously evolving. Like, this movie was creepily realistic, and that's something that I'm just wondering where technology will take us in the next few years, because it's moving along pretty damn fast. The Mandalorian de-aging stuff is already damn impressive. It's not mastered yet, so I do wonder where we're going to go with this sort of realistic CGI as far as capturing how humans behave. So Jamie Foxx plays Joe Gardner, who's a jazz musician, piano player, but he also teaches music for middle school, I think it was. And he's the main character of the film. And what happens in the movie, essentially the plot of the movie, is that he ends up getting a gig with a band he's been wanting to get into for many, many years, like a dream come true for him. And then what happens is he's celebrating on the streets and he ends up dying. He dies, but very much like Coco and All Dogs Go to Heaven, that's not where the story ends. Coco, I mean, the movie was very similar to Coco, I would say. But not identical. It treats death very different. So when he dies, you know, when you die, you're supposed to go to a place called the Great Beyond, which is basically heaven, you know, the afterlife. But instead, he ends up going to somewhere called the Great Before. And this is something that's kind of thought-provoking as well when it comes to lots of major religions and discussing the afterlife, because most of the faiths that are out there focus a lot on the afterlife and what's going to happen after we die. We go to heaven, we go, you know, we reincarnate, whatever you believe in, you know, we become part of the earth, whatever you believe in, you know, it's always about the future, but what about the past? Like, did we exist in the past? Obviously, reincarnation explains this, but the way it's treated in this film is that there's almost like a pre-heaven heaven where, which of course, in the Bible, I think it talks about that, albeit very briefly, and that's where the children are, and before they go down to earth to inhabit human bodies, and because they're souls, basically, right? They're souls, hence the movie Soul. It's a pun on, you know, soul and soul music, whatever. And so what ends up happening is these sort of like pre-human souls or whatever have to go through this training process. And what ends up happening is Joe ends up meeting up with this pre-human soul named 22, because they all have numbers. And basically, the story is pretty much about Joe and 22 and kind of like their journey to get back into, well, no, Joe's journey to get back into his body so he can freaking go and perform and do what he wanted to do and live his dream and live his life, because he doesn't think that he should be dead. Whereas 22 doesn't want to ever inhabit a body. 22's been running away from inhabiting a body for a very long time. And 22's played by Tina Fey. There's some pretty interesting meta humor here where Joe asks Tina Fey, or asks 22, you know, you sound like a middle-aged white woman, why is that? And then 22 changes his voice to kind of match up other people, or her voice or whatever. I don't think they even specify gender, I don't really remember. But, you know, they go back to Earth, and that's where the hijinks ensue. Now, I don't want to go beyond this because it would be going into spoiler territory, okay? And I really want people to watch this movie without spoilers, at least not without, like, the last two acts, because it does take some really interesting and unique turns, and it is a funny movie. But the thing about this movie, yo, is this movie had a ton of heart. I just want to tell you right off the hop that this was an amazing movie. Every time I watch a Pixar movie, I always feel something. I always feel something every single time, with no exceptions. Pixar movies have a way, the way they're written, the way they're directed. In many ways, Pixar is the most consistent film studio in the business right now, maybe ever. Because, I mean, we got, 25 years at this point of Pixar, roughly, right around there. And it's great film after great film. They're not all classics or anything, but boy, is their body of work incredible, and Soul is no exception. And what blows my mind is this movie captures the soul, no pun intended, better than a lot of other films that are live action. The thing about this movie is that even though Pixar movies are made basically for kids, but they also have something for the parents to like. So whenever you see a Pixar film, usually the parent will go with the kid and enjoy the film because there's some kind of adult theme or something that they gravitate to. There's something in the writing that they can kind of relate to that relates to them, or it brings them back to being a kid again. They're very easy films to watch. This movie is no exception, except that this movie, I think, is going to really work better with adults than with kids. This is very much an adult story. Yes, the cartoon, they have some slapstick humor and some classic Pixar humor, things that are kind of, I guess, I don't want to say postmodern, but, I guess modern would be the right word. A lot of references to things on the internet. Not too many, but also this movie does explore black culture pretty well. It is the first ever Pixar film with an African-American protagonist, and that's something pretty cool right there. The barbershop scene is the one that everybody talks about being just very poignant, and that's what this movie is. I've been building up to this. This movie is very deep. This movie addresses a philosophy of life that a ton of people really should listen to, because this movie's pretty much like 3 or 4 of my speakdoms wrapped up into one. I mean, dude, there are life lessons here. There are certain philosophies of life. It's very existential. A lot of stuff about what really inspires you, not only in your work, but as a person. And also a lot of talk about purpose and what our purpose is in life. And, if you're out there and you feel like you're a lost soul, which is a pun in this film, this is a movie that might cheer you up. And, people are saying they cried at the end of the movie. It hit me. It hit me. Because the ending was very powerful. The entire story is very powerful. And, it's like every Pixar movie, bro. They're all good. What do you want me to tell you? This one, though, there were themes. If you're like over the age of 18, or maybe even over the age of like 16, this movie, and if the older you are, the more you'll appreciate it, because the stories that are told and the story that is told about this character is just something that we can relate to as adults when you go through something and when you live your life and you have these dreams and aspirations, and then at some point in your life something happens to rattle that. This movie really tackles that topic really well. So I really like this movie a lot. Like, it's a thumbs up film. And if you have Disney Plus and you've already got the service for other things like Mandalorian or whatever you like to watch, Marvel movies, old classic animated Disney films, which I love those movies, go ahead and watch this movie. And you don't have to watch it with your family. Even though it is a family film, it's not really dirty or anything. Obviously, it's Pixar, but you don't have to watch it with your family. Even if you are an adult who is by himself or herself and you want to watch something that's going to really touch you and make you think, this is a good film. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. Check it out. Way better than Wonder Woman. I'm sorry, but it blows Wonder Woman out of the water. Go see it. Not really fair to compare them, but it's Pixar and they're always good. Talk to you later.